But we have a quorum, so I'm just going to move an extension of time. We've got a second, which is Councillor Simpson, and that is until the business to be completed. So have people happy with that? Mover in a second. All those in favour? Aye. Okay. All right. We are now open the meeting again. So I'm going to ask Councillor Simpson as the mover to speak to this amendment of B. As a new B.
Oh, sorry. So, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we're all in a place that we want to help Eden Park, but we're also very conscious of the obligations we have as governors of ratepayers' money. So to that end, I'd like to take my resolutions, discuss them with you backwards. I'm going to start with C. That I think at the end of the day, as a result of RFA understanding the importance of having Eden Park, this is one of the best outcomes for ratepayers, because the savings that we will make having them as part of the suite will be probably 480 million over the next 10 years. And I don't think the substantive motion or mine really differ in that point. Then I'm going to jump up to A, and it's about the loan. I don't think it should be interest-free. Some people think it should be interest-free. And in a perfect world for some, yes, it would be interest-free. But as I said, as a sound steward of ratepayer money, what we've got here is an agreement to have council take on that loan. And in doing so, they actually have a better deal than they've currently got. Now, we won't know exactly what that deal looks like, but it's a better deal than they've currently got. And I think that's good. So the sticking point is a loan or a grant. Now, my amendment to the resolutions actually hangs on trust and confidence. And I say trust and confidence because staff have been talking to Eden Park since the May resolutions of last year. They have been talking with Eden Park about delivering on the resolutions we passed last year. And Eden Park agreed. They agreed to have that agreement around the 40 million. They agreed to a grant for 9.8 million over 3 years, even though potentially they wanted 3.2 over 10 years. But they agreed. They don't agree with the substantive. But I want to tell you in my words, my understanding why they haven't and why I'm so keen to push through the amendment. And Mr. Mackay actually said it, but I'm going to say it again. First, it's around the loan and what it looks like financially on the books. It doesn't matter if it's interest-free. It is still there as debt, as a loan. Now, you have had confirmation from the chairman of the BNZ Bank as to what this should look like on the books, and from an auditor who also sits on Eden Trust. They understand the structure of loans, and I'm telling you, it needs to be a grant. The Office of the Auditor General talked about a number of points around the principles of funding for non-government organisations. The substantive does not reflect those principles. The Auditor General has specifically given advice around them. Principles-based approach, fairness, integrity. Don't make loans, but make grants. And fiscal prudence around the grant process, not burdening Eden Park with more debt. This is an accounting structure that a whole bunch of people around this table who aren't accountants are trying to reformulate. I don't think we should do that. The Minister of Sport wrote to the Mayor in November declining their section of the 3.2. They didn't tell Eden Park that. We didn't tell Eden Park that. We didn't tell them that the game had changed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I end with the trust and confidence. We expect Auckland to have trust and confidence in the way we behave. We have not, in my opinion, given Eden Park trustees the trust and confidence that they deserve in what we are doing. Last week, they were told the game had changed, having agreed to pull back on what they really wanted to something that worked for us and the residents and ratepayers and communities of Auckland and them. So I was going to say $64 million question. It's probably pretty close to that, isn't it? The big question is, why aren't we sticking to something that the Eden Park trustees agree with and that works for us? I think we should. I think we should. It's a financial model that works for them and that works for us. I move with hope that you will support me on something that both parties will walk away from today happy with the outcome thereof. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Simpson, for putting up this amendment. I mean, I'll be upfront straight at the start. It's not my preferred position at all, but it is a compromise, and I think it's a compromise that both parties should be able to live with. In terms of the Eden Park funding options, it's the last thing. So it's their least preferred option. There are no options after this one as far as they're concerned, and I think that's worth bearing in mind. And let me just say at the outset how refreshing it is to see some belated recognition of the importance of Eden Park, because that has been lacking for quite some time and has become really marked in the term of this council. Point number 40, providing a level of funding to support the infrastructure requirement for ongoing park operations is in council's commercial and regional interests. It's in our own interests. That's backed up by our two CCOs, RFA. We see the financial and operational sustainability of Eden Park as an essential element. There's quite some strong adjectives getting used here. ATEED, it is important to have a world-class, large capacity stadium that enables Auckland to bid for significant events. There is no other stadium. It is only Eden Park, and there is going to be nothing, despite all the hot air in Auckland around the last 6 or 7 months. The Prime Minister has said that some time ago when the first waterfront stadium was mooted, saying it's not a priority for us for the next 10 years, and even then we will have more important things to do, just like Auckland Council. So, like it or not, it is Eden Park for that next decade and conceivably a bit beyond that. And I hope Aucklanders realise it, because they've been done a disservice by being led to believe that anything else is a possibility, because it's not. I would just like to say that I think the trust deed is important. The trust deed is important because what I detect is the implication, if not the explicit expression, that this trust, this Eden Park Trust, is some sort of foreign entity or some business operation that stands to gain out of it. They're not. They're a charitable trust, for goodness sake, a public benefit entity whose trust deed, most basic guiding principle, talks about promoting multi-purpose stadium for our sports, all sporting codes, recreational, musical, cultural events for the benefit of the public of the region. For the benefit of the public of the region. That's who they are in existence for. Go along to any sporting game. If there's one thing that unifies Auckland, it's being at Eden Park with the cross-section of people that are there. All walks of life, all corners of Auckland. If there's one place that unifies Auckland, it's Eden Park, more so than anyone. And that's not going to change either. So in making a decision today, we're making a decision on behalf of our public. It's in their deed. It's at the park every week of the year if you go along to it. It's in all the local events, the regional events, the national events. We don't have World Cups without Eden Park. When we do have them, they're incredibly successful. Rugby World Cup, Cricket World Cup, and whatever else World Cup are coming up. It's Eden Park. So I find it a little bit objectionable in those circumstances to have almost an undercurrent of hostility. And we saw elements of that there today. It's just not appropriate. Central to my view of this is this $40 million loan, which I would suggest most people in Auckland are blissfully unaware of. I was unaware of it, I say to my shame, the exact circumstances prior to this becoming more publicly debated. That's crucial to our decision here today. They got landed with this $40 million loan when our predecessors pulled the pin, except for the ARC, the much maligned ARC, who put in $10 million. The rest of them did a runner, put up a loan that would get guaranteed, but came up with no actual money. They were never going to be able to repay that loan. I find it incredible that they haven't been to us long before this. They had no chance of repaying that loan. Stadiums around the world struggle to make money. We know that. In Australia, the large multi-purpose stadiums are funded by the state government. Our funding of Eden Park has been nothing, hasn't it, up till now? Or next to nothing, or nothing. So we've put nothing in. So if we were comparing ourselves to the New South Wales state government, who have several big multi-purpose stadiums that they've built and that they fund operationally, we've got off incredibly lightly over the X number of decades that have been there. I think that what's essential today is for us to have listened to the Eden Park Trust and to have taken account of their options as they see them and what we can address. The $40 million loan and the other loans that go with it, they're not at danger. They get paid back if anything happens. What we're talking about is this $9.8 million. This is what all this discussion today, as Councillor Simpson has revolved around. Whether to make that a grant or whether to make it a limited recourse loan. The Trust have told us their last option is that they would like that to be a grant. And a grant to do what? My goodness me. A grant to replace the turf. What could be more fundamental to the operation of Eden Park than the playing surface that is used for rugby and cricket and all the events that take place there? The other one to do with the lift, and the last one to do with floodlights. Also rather important when we're playing sports matches to have good lighting. So absolutely fundamental to their operations as a stadium, as a successful stadium. So what they're coming to for us is not frivolous, it's not incidental, it's absolutely essential to the successful operation. And we should be aware of that. So please, let's not have this wrangling over this rather moot point. They're not going to go belly up. Let's face it, they're not going to go belly up, which makes all the hyperbole about having the loan guaranteed academic. Let's deliver to this entity who exists for the benefit of our public an arrangement, the least preferred arrangement, that will sustain them over the next 3 years, by which time, with visiting whatever regulatory mechanisms that they will have to pursue, we will be in a good position, and as they will be, to sum up what's the best move going forward. We're not committed to anything after that. What we will be in is in a perfect position to see how it's gone, how the additional fundraising ideas have been borne out, and we will be none the worse off. Don't buy into this punitive kind of limited recourse that is quite at odds with all our other grants. You saw that, at odds with what we do with other entities, at odds with what we did with the tennis just last week. Eden Park, the reputation has taken enough of a battering, quite unfairly by people, I might say, sadly associated with this council, that has harmed the brand of Eden Park, that has created uncertainty for the people who are employed at Eden Park, and has done us as Aucklanders no good in terms of our position in both in New Zealand and internationally. So I commend this compromise amendment by Councillor Simpson, and would urge you to support it.
John, it's not a compromise amendment. It's quite the opposite of that. It's an alternative, which I don't support, and I'd like to speak against it. We don't own Eden Park. We don't have any governance responsibility for Eden Park. But we do have a financial relationship with Eden Park, and we have a duty of care to protect ratepayers' $40 million loan. We also have an emotional relationship with Eden Park, which people have talked about today. People love it. Whenever Eden Park opens its doors, people flood in. And that I acknowledge that. But that shouldn't blind us to our responsibility to ratepayers. And Doug's gone, but I want to talk about that word he used today, which was prudent decision-making. Because the prudent decision is to give Eden Park a good deal through the loan. And I'm really disappointed that Doug came in today with his hand out for more. So it wasn't, thank you very much for this great deal, which is a great deal, because I had to be persuaded into it. That's why I know it's a great deal. But no, that wasn't enough. It was, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and councillors, but no, we actually want no strings attached. We want you to throw some money at us. Forgive me, but that's exactly what you're asking for. If you do that, I can think of at least 100 to 200 groups all over Auckland who aren't getting funded or who've been shortchanged by us or who just work on the smell of an oily rag. And they'll say, this isn't fair, that you've got rules for some folks and you've got different rules for others. That's what the message that would go out today from this council if we throw money at Eden Park. So it's no disrespect to Eden Park, but no, thank you, no. We want some guarantees for our ratepayers, but if you do go under, if you do decide to sell up, we need to protect our investment. And that's what this very carefully worded report and recommendations do. It gives, when you get the certainty, everything that Doug asked for, you've got through the original set of recommendations. You've got your certainty, you've got your security, you can go and do your new turf, you can go and do all the stuff you want. We've got certainty for our ratepayers too. So, no, just no, no thank you. That's the prudent decision. And that's what our ratepayers expect of their councillors. And if you, there's been a few polls. I think the Herald did one last week. 69% said no, didn't think we should support Eden Park. Oh, it wasn't 69%. I'm sure Simon will tell me the right figures. 55% opposed. Got them here. And if you do fund them, 69% said it should be a loan. That's a nothing poll. But we've all been talking, and everybody has different views about Eden Park. But most definitely, we love Eden Park, but we're not throwing money at it because guess what? The begging bowl will be back again before we know it. No, 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 no.
Mayor Goff, sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm surprised to hear that we're being punitive or hostile towards Eden Park. We are offering a package of $63.2 million. I just asked Stephen before, is there any other sporting or like organisation that we're offering that sum of money to? And he said he couldn't think of it. This is a huge sum of money. And is that money free? No. How do we pay for the 40 million that we take over from the ASB loan at the moment? We borrow the money. Kathy Casey is absolutely right. There's an opportunity cost here. We came together, we felt pretty good that we were going to put 5 million into Auckland City Mission to house people who are homeless. We're putting 63.2 million into an organisation that is running Eden Park. And we've just got to think about this. You know, people said, oh, things have changed over time. Too damn right they've changed. We know that the cost to Auckland Council of the infrastructure that we will be funding is going to go up and going to go up significantly. The days when we've got an open checkbook and can say to every group that comes to us, yeah, we'll help you out. I'd love to help everybody out. But it's not fiscally responsible to say we're going to gift this and we're going to gift that. I want to make it clear too that in every piece of feedback that I've got, it's not from people saying you're being mean and miserable people to Eden Park. Actually, it's the opposite. Why the hell are you putting this much money into Eden Park? On social media, have a look at it. In the correspondence that you've received, read it. The poll that the Herald ran, 69% begrudgingly said, if you're going to give them money, make it a loan, and 14% said, no, give it as a grant. Well, you know, we have two obligations here. One is to help Eden Park keep going, and I'm committed to that. But the second obligation is to our ratepayers and our residents. It's not our money we're giving away, it's their money. And they've sent a very clear message to us. We expect you to be guardians of our money and to treat it carefully. If we give this as a limited recourse loan instead of a grant, what does that mean to Eden Park that might in any way inhibit it in what it needs to do? We've heard the message from Nicola and from James. It won't make any difference. The 9.8 is interest-free. There is not a terminal date on the loan. All it means is that if they do go under, or if they realise their asset by way of an asset sale, we have protected the money that we have advanced to them from our constituents. Is there anyone here that will go out and say to our constituents, no, we've given them the money, no strings attached, and if they sell up tomorrow, we get nothing back, you get nothing back, the people who've funded it get nothing back, but it goes to the beneficiaries? Because I can't look a constituent in the eye and say, yep, that's a fair deal. You know, look, of course the trust will look after its beneficiaries. It's looking after its beneficiaries now. You know, while this organisation is really struggling, the representative on the trust board from Auckland Cricket told me, look, it's great, the arrangement we've got. We're getting $1 million in cash in kind from Eden Park Trust Board each year. Notwithstanding the fact that there's a concern about whether they are a going concern, the beneficiaries are taking money in. That's what I got from the Auckland Cricket representative on the trust board. $1 million in cash in kind each year from the trust board, while the trust board is coming to us and saying, we need money because we can't make ends meet. Well, I'm sorry, we have an obligation, every one of us around this table, to the people who put us here, to look after their interests. The one difference between this amendment and the original one put before us by our officers is that if the asset is sold, the ratepayers' interests are protected. Who here thinks that we shouldn't protect the ratepayers' interests? Who thinks that they have no say in it, that they put the money up, but if it is captured in an asset sale, somebody else can take that money away and the ratepayer gets no return on it? Because that is the one difference between that amendment and the resolution in front of you. The resolution in front of you enables Eden Park Trust Board to do everything it wants and needs to do. But we're saying, yeah, there is one string attached, that if you guys sell up, Actually, our ratepayers do want their money back. And what's unreasonable about that? Can somebody tell me, who takes a call, why it's unreasonable that the ratepayer should get their money back in the event of an asset sale? I can't think of a reason. So somebody please help me with that, because what we're doing here is giving the Trust Board what they want and they need, but protecting our ratepayers. I remember the last session we had here, and we had Victoria Toon from the Trust Board. She said, "You are a miserable pack of so-and-sos. Why don't you do what Wellington City Council does to Westpac?" Guess what? We heard it from James. We are. Wellington Council, this is what our officials have told us in our paper. They said that what we are doing here is very similar to the limited recourse loan that Wellington City Council gives to the Trust Stadium. Now, that's what they tell me. That's what I'm prepared to believe in it. I want to applaud the Eden Park Trust Board. I think they're doing some good things to try to get their revenue lines up. I can't talk about all of them because the deals haven't been signed yet, but there's one that could bring in $600,000 of extra revenue simply by using the space at Eden Park Trust Board better. And Nick Sauntner, all credit to you and your negotiating efforts and your efforts to make the stadium available for wider uses. I applaud that. I'm not against Eden Park. I want to keep Eden Park going. Wayne, you talked about, we'll be spending $530 million if we don't do this. It's nonsense. Whatever figure you use, it's a nonsense, because we are allowing the Eden Park Trust Board access to the funds that will enable them to keep going as a viable entity. All we're doing is saying, if you sell up, we want the ratepayer, their interest to be protected and them to get their money back rather than that money going off to a third party. And no one of our constituents would regard that as unreasonable. So, Mr. Chairman,
I do have to ask you to wrap up.
Sorry, I'm about to do that. I support the original recommendation. I don't support this amendment because it leaves the ratepayer high and dry. If there's an asset sale, the money goes to a third party, not back to the person who's actually funded it, who are the people that vote their money through their rates and who elect us to this table.
Right, no doubt as a counter to that, we've got Councillor Walker.
It's actually not hard to counter most of the negative comments that I've heard, actually, and I think most of the councillors know that. What Eden Park are looking for, in part, is one, a rollover of the loan, and we all know around the table that as far as security is concerned, that's not an issue. So let's put security to bed around the loan. That's not an issue. The other thing that they're looking for is a grant, the same as any other organisation that comes to us. We know that they actually tick the box for a grant because the officers have told us so. It fits with our facilities partnership policy. And I mentioned that it fits strategically, wisely, equitably and sustainably. And we all know, because all of us councillors have had the presentation from RFA, and they've told us that it's going to cost $482 million plus $91 million if you spend on an expensive facility for New Zealand cricket, not Auckland cricket. So that's a lot of money. And we know that RFA is making a loss on their stadiums of $6 million a year, and I can't even get business cases. So I really get staggered, absolutely staggered, when I hear other councillors pulling Eden Park over the coals, but we don't apply anywhere near the same oversight over the entity that we directly own. Can you hear that? And I hope the people of Auckland can hear that. So here we've got a situation in terms of financial prudence that RFA have told us, and it's here in black and white, that helping Eden Park saves in excess of $500 million. $500 million. in capital. And Matthew Walker agreed with me at a modest, say, 6%, that equates to $30 million a year. That's our Chief Financial Officer. So that's the comparison of not helping out Eden Park. So I don't think that any of us are going to say that we're not going to help them, because I think even the Chief Executive would agree that we absolutely have to. I think we're all agreed on that. We have to help them. I'm seeing some heads nodding. So the question that we have to ask ourselves is, what is the fairest way to help them? And in terms of equitable treatment and a partnership, how would we treat someone else? How would we help our brother or sister if they came to us and they needed a handout? And we probably wouldn't say, I'm going to give you this and I'm going to take it back. That would not be a great gesture. And I would say that I would not agree with that. So I would say to Eden Park that yes, on my part, I'm happy to give you a grant in the same way as I would give any other organisation a grant. And I would say right now, because of the circumstances in New Zealand, if ever there is a place that people need to go to that is safe and secure, this stadium is it. This stadium is it. You look around the other stadiums and I can tell you, and if you've gone to them, they are not fit for purpose. So if ever there was a time for us to support this stadium, it's now. It's a sound investment. It makes sense. It is incredibly well run. And I just want to say a big thank you to the people from Eden Park that run it so well for the people of Auckland. So it's a partnership. There are two parties to that partnership. There's Eden Park Trust. They're doing their bit, and we need to do our bit and look after them in the fairest way possible, which is a grant.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I look at the substantive motion, which I'm not speaking to now, but when I look at that, I can support that, but I can't support this, because what I'm interested in is a balanced approach. If you look at what we're offering, Eden Park can do the things it needs to do, and all power to it. It has a lot of issues it needs to deal with around raising revenue. And if you look at paragraph 30, there's a lot of issues around sustainability. But if they can have this loan and know they've got a security, more security over the larger loan, so the whole 63.3 million, they can just get on and do what they need to do. They don't have to worry about getting their loan underwritten every year. They don't have to worry about any of that. At the same time, so they can do what they need to do. And all power to Eden Park. They will get on and do that. But on the other hand, I want to know that we have security for our ratepayers. Absolutely. And the things I've been hearing around the table from the people that support this amendment, you know, I can understand those words coming from Eden Park Trust Board members, because they absolutely have a duty. Their first duty is to Eden Park Trust. And so they're asking and doing everything they should do as Trust Board members. They're exercising their obligations and duties. But my obligation and duty, and everybody around this table, is to the whole of Auckland, not to the Eden Park Trust Board. We have to balance what we do here today with the rest of the needs right across our region. And so for me, this is a win-win. It's a win for Eden Park because they get to do all the things on that list on page 11. For the next 3 years, $9.86 or so million of capital projects. That's absolutely significant. And at the same time, if things don't go well, and I don't want them not, I want them to go well. But if we're investing in sports delivery and a stadium, I want that to be ongoing for Aucklanders. So if it doesn't happen, at least we get that money back and we can help do that somewhere else. So we're safeguarding the ability to deliver those kind of facilities around Auckland. So that's what's important to me. I'm also concerned around the fact that we've got this view by some people that we don't care. Of course we care, otherwise we wouldn't have put this package together. We don't have to do any of this, not one, none of it. We could just say, too bad, we'll just keep underwriting your loan every year and you can just struggle on. But we're actually offering a really good package, and it's been accepted as if it's, you know, you're giving someone a bit of a dead fish or something. You know, this is a good deal, but I want to make sure I've got security for ratepayers of Auckland. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right. Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Members, I don't think we're that far apart, actually, despite the heat and volume of some of the contributions. And I want to thank the officers, Mr. Town and his staff, for, I think, the excellent staff work that's gone into this. Thank you. What we are dealing with here is the hangover, if I could use that word, of amalgamation. And the hangover from politics of the time, where the government of the day, with the objective of the Rugby World Cup, put in a huge amount of money into Eden Park, and local government in Auckland didn't play its role for political reasons. Certain mayors made promises that they would never support Eden Park, and they were unable to back down on those promises. Not that that did them much good in the end. But the rivalry and fractiousness and narrow inward-looking approach that all too often occurred back in the legacy days is something that we should be careful to avoid here in 2019. And though on paper we're not far apart, I still feel that there is this sense of the other. You know, Eden Park's the other, RFA is ours, and they're the rivals. There's been too much of that, but Eden Park is a prime cultural sporting asset for Auckland, part of our heritage, and we need to accept that. Most of us do. However, I am going to support Councillor Simpson's amendment, and I congratulate her on her leadership, and also Councillor Walker and Councillor Watson for again and again coming up with plain common sense when it comes to sporting facilities in Auckland. Now, Wellington has been mentioned, and in particular the Westpac Stadium. That was built virtually purely by Wellingtonians. The Wellington Regional Council, the Wellington City Council, and the various Wellington TLAs. The WRC, or Greater Wellington, and the City Council made a capital contribution. The Lottery Grants Board put some money in, but the rest was essentially paid off by loan. They paid off the lot. And so I know some councillors are wary about making contributions to things we don't own. But I didn't pick that up last week in regard to tennis, and maybe you could say, well, the underlying land is part of the domain and therefore there's a connection. But then we come to the Auckland Regional Funding Board, and I've just got a letter here from the chair of that worthy organisation, in which this council pays out $18 million a year to entities we don't own, cheerfully. And they are worthy entities. And of course we support them, but we don't own them. But we have a duty to support them. And so we do. Then there's the America's Cup. Remember that? And the cost blowout. And again, there were booming speeches, but they were for the extra money, for things that we don't particularly own, for a private enterprise, and they had worthy reasons for that. Okay, so let's try and be consistent. As I said, in detail, we're not that far apart. But in order to solve the untidy mess that we've been left with the Eden Park funding and Eden Park governance and Eden Park ownership, we need to create an environment of goodwill and cooperation for the good of Auckland. And if people say you're giving money to Eden Park, we have to explain why. And there's all sorts of money that we spend for much less worthy reasons. So in addition to Councillor Simpson and Councillor Walker's amendment, I'm going to foreshadow a C, Mr Chairman, that the council initiate discussions with the government to seek amendment of the Eden Park Trust deed to appropriately align the governance of Eden Park with funding. And I think that is the necessary second part of this deal, because I agree with all the members who have made it clear that we represent the ratepayers, and therefore the ratepayers who already have paid for this in some small way. The ARC donated 10 million, as has been mentioned. Was that easy to achieve? No, it was not. The ARC had to worry about Mount Smart and its funding demands.
Councillor Lee, just
but we did it.
up.
But we did it because it was in the national interest, and the government of the day respected us for putting our hands up and coming to the party. So, Mr Chairman, I'll end now, but I would like to, I'll produce this addendum or amendment, but I certainly support what Councillor Simpson and Councillor Walker, and I believe a majority of councillors around the table are trying to achieve in resolving this Eden Park problem. Thank you.
Right, we'll just notice there is already another foreshadowed amendment subsequent, so well, no. This is an amendment. We discussed this. If this carries, that goes into the substantive motion. Then we have an amendment, a further amendment from Councillor Darby. We will discuss that, and that will go somewhere. And then we'll have another amendment. So that's where it is at the moment. So I have Councillor Filipino.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Lee is right when he states that it's not far apart. We're not that far apart. My only dilemma that I've got is whether it's a grant or whether it's a loan. That's the dilemma. And when I have this dilemma, I ring two people or I contact them. And they are the two chairs of the two local boards that both myself and Councillor Collins represent. And I've done that. And as a result of their comments that they gave me, I will not be supporting this. And, you know, I no issues around the 9.8. I got none at all in regards to going to Eden Park. But look, for me, and I was just around that, I had to call the two local board chairs. Chair, I ended up laughing to myself when Councillor Walker mentioned what will we, you know, what would you do if your brother or sister wanted some money for you, you know? And I think Councillor Walker said I will give them a grant. Well, over the many years, and Councillor Collins knows this, over the many years I have given money to my family, 30,000 in one particular case. But what I do is I get my money back. I don't give them a grant, but I utilise my home loan facility. I had other money go to to my family members of 15,000 each. But for me, what happens is that from my perspective, I am not supporting this, but supporting the substantive in regards to no interest on the loan. Thank you.
Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Chair Foley would have liked a phone call over the boundaries quite early. Chair, I want to just... that's fine. Okay. I want to just reflect on a couple of the comments that have been made today, and just to point out that Doug Mackay came here seeking the council's commitment to its word. Actually had written that. He'd written for that. And what he wanted was for us to make good on our commitments from the May Finance and Performance Committee meeting, the 15th of May Finance and Performance Committee meeting, which included the non-cumulative cost share contribution of up to $3.2 million per annum for 10 years, at $32 million. That's really what the Eden Park Trust would like. But anyway, he came to us and said, well, look, you know, please can you make good on that? Make good on that resolution. Make good on that resolution that carried your support, Councillor Casey. Make good on the resolution that carried your support, Councillor Filipaina. Make good on the resolution that His Worship supported. And who else? Councillor Bartley, Councillor Clough, Councillor Fletcher, Councillor Hills, Councillor Hulse, Councillor Lee, Councillor Simpson, Councillor Stewart, Councillor Wayne Walker, and myself. So for me, Mr. Chair, I want to make good on that particular resolution. And this amendment actually isn't the one that I really want, because I believe that we should make good on a $32 million grant, which is what we voted for, the will we voted for in May last year. However, that has changed. And the Eden Park Trust Board has said, okay, well, fine, let's look at an amendment, an alternative that might work. And it is about getting the working capital necessary to get the renewals over the line and to address its planning issues. And that's what the amendment from Councillor Simpson seeks to do. And it has to be in the way of a grant, because I can fully accept that trustees of the Eden Park Trust Board would be very concerned fulfilling their fiduciary responsibilities as trustees about taking on another credit facility. Now, it has been interesting listening to some of the contributions, politicians debating the merits of loan facilities and credit finance with the chair of the board of the Bank of New Zealand has been an interesting experience. But we have learnt some things today. We have learnt some things. We have learnt that earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and amortisation, if you look at that, Eden Park does better than any of the other stadiums in Auckland. Is that acknowledged? Well, I acknowledge that. I think that's a very good thing. I do hope that we're going to put the same analysis, the same test to the other stadiums owned by Regional Facilities Auckland. But Mr. Chair, ownership isn't the key for me. The key for me is to get the assets that are going to deliver the events and the amenity for Auckland. Mr. Chair, I think that one of the reasons why people want to have a limited recourse loan is that if there were to be a wind-up, and there won't be a wind-up, but if there were to be a wind-up, some people want the cash, maximise the cash for other investments, such as, for example, a waterfront stadium. Well, I'm not going to support that, but I do think that Mr. Mackay was right when he talked about the prudence of a $10 million contribution to avoid a $482 million plus a $91 million cost exposure that we will face. So I think that is pretty prudent. And with respect to Westpac Stadium, let's not forget exactly what Councillor Lee said, that it is not the same, that the contribution from the people of Wellington to build that facility was incredibly generous. It was an unsecured loan, no interest charged on that loan. It doesn't pay rates. It's a pretty stark contrast, actually. It doesn't pay rates. I want to end, Mr. Chairman, by just reflecting on what the Office of the Auditor General has said. And I think that it is important that we reflect on these matters. We talked about the need for organisations such as us, and we are in a power relationship whereby we reflect on a system of support whereby we take into account the sustainability of the charitable organisation, and that we do not exploit, and that we always act fairly and reasonably. And next time I sit in a corporate box drinking my orange juice alongside Councillor Darby, I look forward to discussing these matters with you, Councillor Darby, and I hope that we can come to a common position. But today I will be voting for Councillor Simpson's amendment because I think it is actually a reasonable amendment and goes some way towards keeping our word and acting in good faith with what we committed to in May last year.
Mr. Chairman, I move the question be put.
By division, please.
Well, I think that would be unfortunate because there's five more people wish to speak at this stage, and I think this is an important debate where everyone gets to have their say. So unless you've got a second, okay.
Well, it has.
Okay, all right, well, we'll take, whether we're going to actually put the vote, we'll do that by division.
People should speak.
I don't know, I believe there was a seconder somewhere floating around.
There
I believe
was
there was a seconder, Councillor Fletcher,
Stewart.
so to put it. Okay, well, we'll do this by division, whether we should be putting it, okay? Okay, so the division is over, whether we put it to the vote now without the other councillors having a say.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. An amendment has been called on the procedural motion that the motion be put, the amendment be put. So I'll ask for your votes. Councillor Clow.
No.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Clow is no. Councillor Bartley.
No.
Councillor Casey.
No.
Councillor Collins. Councillor Cooper. Yes. Councillor Darby.
Against.
Councillor Filipina.
Against.
Councillor Fletcher. Mayor Goff.
Against.
Councillor Hills.
No.
Member Hanare.
No.
Councillor Hulse. No. Councillor Lee.
Aye.
Councillor Newman.
No.
Councillor Sayers. Councillor Simpson. Councillor Stewart. Yes. Member Taipari.
No.
Councillor Sir John Walker. No. Councillor Wayne Walker.
Yes.
Councillor Watson.
No.
Councillor Young.
Full.
Okay, that was lost. By 15-7. So I'm the next person on the list, so and I'm not at 11 minutes, we better just start this. I had a conversation with Councillor Collins last week or a week before that, and it was about the stadium, the venue development strategy, and obviously we were talking, it was fairly obvious we were talking about a potential stadium development in his ward. But I was interested in the comment he made to me. He said, oh, I want to do that, but I'm not so sure about the rest of the development, and you're just really a lackey for the mayor who wants to build a new stadium downtown. Now, I was pretty alarmed at that because it's pretty well known by, certainly among most, that I have probably been the burr under the saddle with Floor 27, with the mayor, in saying what a mistake it was to do that, commission that report, because this, and I've just consistently given advice to Floor 27 that it is not a priority, any new stadium, and why are we even commissioning reports on it when it's 15, 20 years away? I believe I've had the influence so that the mayor and any pronouncements in the last year or so have been that Eden Park will be one of the business cases. If in 2024 we actually do have that debate, because it won't be the next LTP, but it probably will be the LTP after that, where we need to seriously have that discussion about any redevelopment of Eden Park or a new stadium somewhere else. I am pleased to think that the mayor has moved on and that Eden Park is in the mix for a potential redevelopment, and there would definitely be a business case done for that. I am a supporter of Eden Park, and I made it also pretty clear that I won't be around. Well, I might be around, who knows? I might stay around just for that debate. But in 4 years' time, 5 years' time, I want to make sure Eden Park is in the mix to be considered, because I think Eden Park's got everything going for it, personally. And I am not at this stage, but I've got to be objective, keen on a new stadium downtown. It's interesting that Councillor Newman talked about the power relationship. In reality, the power relationship is with the government. Eden Park Trust, it is an independent trust. They appoint 5 of the 9 trustees, and the other 2 plus 2 are guaranteed by the constitution of it. So we are not the bad guys here. Arguably, the government are the real bad guys, and we are the second bad guys, if we're going to look at Mr. Brady's judgment or standards that he put about. I have to say, I am not confident. I am not confident in the beneficiaries, in the trustees of the Eden Park Trust. I am not confident that if at some stage in the future that the Eden Park Trust Board got wound up, I am not confident that they would do the right thing and put that money towards, e.g., a new stadium. I am not confident that they would do that. Now, there may be good reasons. Maybe Auckland Cricket, Auckland Rugby should get something, but I'm not confident where the rest of that money is going. And I know they've only got 4 votes, but I'm not confident that 1 or if not 2 of the other 5 trustees are going to vote with them and therefore disperse all the money effectively around the clubs of Auckland. Now, that's fine. That's within their prerogative because they're an independent trust. But I want to make sure that the money we put in, which at the moment is 40, plus we're covering another loan of 6.5, and if we're going to give some more money, I want to be confident that we at least get back for the ratepayers 60 whatever million it will be in total, to ensure that we at least have a bit of a starting fund to go towards a new stadium if that's what we decide to do. Why should we give this money unencumbered without any security so that it can be dispersed elsewhere? So I'm not going to say anything more other than, honestly, councillors, we're down to a very fine point here. They're getting exactly what they want. And I'm sorry, you heard Mr. Mackay say, after I asked him, is there a strong legal opinion that you have to say that the trustees are putting themselves at some sort of risk, some fiduciary risk of taking more debt? He said no. I've got a couple of experts that are trustees and they've said this. There is no strong legal opinion. He did not admit there was anything there. So I'm sorry, I can't believe that this is going. And we perhaps think that there's another point that no, they're not going to be putting themselves at risk, because it's a little bit different when it comes to the autonomy, financial autonomy. That's in the objectives. It's in the objectives, and you've heard James explain that point at the workshop. So bang on 5 minutes. What more can I do? Member Taiperi.
Kia ora, Mr. Chairman. So I sort of start the debate with wanting to ask 2 questions, but I'm hopeful that I'm going to act on the basis that I already know the answer, and I can hear the correct answer maybe at the end if someone's got it. So it is about what you just said, really, solvency versus insolvency. And as a decision maker at this table, I sort of wonder, you know, what basis have I got to make a decision to put someone insolvent, if that's what they're saying, or putting them into a situation that jeopardises their ability as trustee. And as members Henry just pointed out, Mainzeal is a pretty good reason to be wary about the things that we do. So then I think about the mayor's or the substantial recommendation and the agreement to remove 4 words and then be quite specific about disposal. And I think to myself, well, if you can do that, why couldn't you do that in a development funding agreement to safeguard the people that you want to safeguard without trying to put or be unsure whether you're putting someone in an insolvent situation. So I think about those things, and I think, can I honestly sit here and vote in a way that I think that is going to cause harm to those directors, those trustees, the trust itself, in that financial manner, when we know that across the country that's been a very serious situation for many, imprisonment and the like. So I don't want to be doing that unknowingly and unwillingly. And I hear your question about whether there was a strong legal opinion. Well, in my world, legal opinions are just that. One has one, another one has one. It's not until you're faced going to court that you find out what the judge actually says. So for all the opinions in the world, that might guide you, but doesn't determine the outcome. I sort of then think to myself, I talked last time at the workshop about Treaty of Waitangi matters. I talked about obligations to old agreements, and I talked about how we should and could and must do that. And in my own world, local government's got a good track history in not following through on agreements, in particular that I know of Māori, and you only have to go to the Waitangi Tribunal and get all the evidence that's been presented across the country and where they've been affected in that manner. I say to myself, well, do I want to be part of that? Then I think about how those things got there. Like there used to be this provision called the Reihana, where Māori were required to go to the Māori Land Court and have a title investigation against their land. They came from miles nowhere. They had no money, but they were given promissory notes and loans and that to get food. And then all of a sudden, that was put against their land, and their land was taken from them. And I think to myself, it's got some eerie stuff around it, you know. I mean, what are we after here? Are we after supporting Eden Park Trust, or are we after other things? And so I got those weighing me down at the moment, and yet I think, you know, and I look at this because it hasn't been up until now, I mean, the question I really have is about the $40 million, or which is probably 53 million. If the council takes that over in September, as proposed in here, does that remove the issue for the Eden Park Trust? And my belief is, no, it doesn't. And so therefore, when we go and put another loan on top of them, after what Mr. Mackay said today, who, in the context of this council, isn't naive because he was the former CEO. So he understands the context of Auckland City and what it means. So again, I'm in a situation where without knowing about whether, if I make a decision today in favour of a loan, am I putting the trust and the trustees into a place of insolvency, and no one, because you just confirmed that, Mr. Chairman, there's no real advice otherwise, and why would we do that? Why would we do that when we already can just give 9.8, which is like is it 1/3 of what we actually set aside in May of 3.2 million for 10 years? So, well, Councillor Fletcher, you didn't even want any of us to speak, so can you let me do mine? So the reality is that, you know, again, it's a tough decision, but we all want Eden Park to be looked after and supported. We do try and compare apples with oranges in the context of, well, maybe they're not part of the Auckland Council whenua in terms of the asset. Maybe we shouldn't support them like we support the others. But really, how many times have they come to us for support? And, you know, I don't always agree with Councillor Lee, but I thought what he said with his history and background to us, I was very open-minded and listened to that strongly, because there was a lot of whakapapa to that in terms of what he was saying from where we are today. So, Mr. Chairman, and those will be no doubt, because I believe this is quite a tight situation. I remember the Weddell Centre. And I remember the two independent Māori statutory boards must have been the only two voting in the room that ended up on social media for the next 3 days saying those bloody Māoris voted and changed the world. And if it's that close again, who knows? But the reality is that I don't know if I can sit here and vote for something that if I thought I was going to make someone insolvent. Kia ora.
Thanks, Chair. So look, I can't help but think our credibility is really on the line here with this. Some would say where the two motions, this amendment and the earlier one, are very close. So I can't help but think there's a massive chasm between the two, actually. It's a significant chasm. One is a very generous loan facility. You cannot get anything more generous than a loan facility that sometime in the future you might be required to pay it back. And from now into that future, there's no interest on it. Tell me how often that pops up in life. That is a very generous loan facility. As compared on the other side of the chasm, here it is, we're walking away. Development agreement, but that just outlines the capital program. So there's been some discussion about Eden Park Trust Board being financially prudent, but this really confirms how imprudent and rash we risk becoming here today. A $9.8 million handout as opposed to a very generous loan with ratepayer protections. That's the chasm. It is quite considerable. So, Councillor Simpson, you've often worn that wonderful badge, the value for money badge, around this table. I'd have to say, if this goes through, that the clasp on that badge has just fallen off. It is.
No, you said some horrible things.
Is there another room to hire, or shall I carry on?
There's another room just next door.
So, Mr. Chair, what we need to look at here is that in some ways this makes a complete mockery of our value for money exercise that we've engaged through committee for the last couple of years. And I think it really just brings into doubt how we've actually approached that whole value for money exercise. We've applied a lot of resource to that value for money exercise, and this really just pulls the rug on it completely. If I go back to the history, and the chair of the trust opened up with some history today, but I reminded the committee of some history that was missing. And initially, that 40 million way back in 2010, ahead of the Rugby World Cup, it was signalled as a bridging loan. And the then chair said that. And then one of the board members at the time, who went on to become the chair, I think, he talked about that, and this was in the New Zealand Herald at the time, that Eden Park has a sustainable business plan and will not require ongoing subsidisation from central or local government. Boy, history is a strange thing. It does get rewritten, but you can't rewrite that part of history. So then we go to the EY report. That's what we commissioned to find out if we were on solid ground for whatever we did in the future. That's what we relied upon. Now, I've heard a lot of comment about the earning before interest tax, brackets, depreciation was taken out of that because there was none. And people relying on that and comparing it with RFA, but we commissioned the EY report to look at the financial projections so that we could check that there was going to be some revenue coming in to support our future decisions. And EY and Grant Thornton, the auditor of Eden Park Trust themselves, expressed grave concerns It's there. Page 58, 59 of the annual report for Eden Park Trust. And then almost the same words, different author, EY report, page 13. And they are flagging real concerns about the viability of Eden Park being a going concern moving forward. And they both identified an absence of business critical capital. And my concern here is that we are actually at risk of literally throwing good money after questionable money. I have grave concerns about the future of Eden Park Trust currently. If you look at its forward bookings, content is king in Stadia. It doesn't have the content. The Auckland Cricket Association have not played a game on the #1 arena for 4 years. New Zealand Cricket are not in agreement on any future bookings. There is not an agreement after 2020 with New Zealand Rugby. We know that the suites are not renting. That a lot of them are being wound up. The agreements are being wound up now or late last year, and they are not being renewed. So the list goes on. And I think we're in a very, very unsavoury position granting them this money under a grant facility as opposed to a limited recourse loan. The EY report, Grant Thornton, that should be where we're basing our arguments, and it just doesn't seem to be sinking in with people the real predicament of Eden Park.
Thank you, Councillor Darby. Now I have down Councillor Hulse and then Councillor Bartley, and that might be when we can take a vote. So, Councillor Hulse.
Thank you. I suspect the amendment may well go through, but I'm resisting the urge just to sort of let it go through to the boundary for 4 and not speaking. So I do, it upsets me that this has become a very binary issue. You're either for Eden Park or against Eden Park. You're either goodies or baddies. You're either like them or don't. You know, nothing could be further from the truth. We have, all of us have had some of the most amazing sporting, watched some of the most amazing sporting fixtures at Eden Park, and we kind of love the place. You know, you can't be a Kiwi South African and not have strong feelings about Eden Park. So, you know, this is not how it is, and I really am saddened that it's been turned into that. And I hadn't realised how binary it had got until things happened today. So obviously there's a lot of other discussions happening that some of us are not privy to. And I think that's part of the problem. It would have been great, whoever the organising team were who've put this together, I would have loved a chance to have talked about that. No one's talked to me, no one's asked my opinion, no one's put it to me, no one's shown me the words, no one's talked to me about this. You know, what a mistake to make. That's not how we do our business. It would be much better to actually talk about these things. The real issue that I have, and I'm not going to support Councillor Simpson's amendment, and I'd like to have a chance to explain why. I think Eden Park is special, as I've said, we think that, but it's not that special that we don't have to apply some prudent decision-making to it. Eden Park can't simply put out their hand and get $10 million. That's not how it works in this joint. Basically, we have our granting facility that Eden Park could happily have applied for. And I guess I'd have to say, where was that? Because part of that is actually a delivery requirement as part of that grant for delivering sports outcomes to kids, our wider communities. And I know a lot of cool stuff is happening at Eden Park now, that's great. But maybe the concern with them was that they wouldn't quite fit all the criteria. I invite them to apply. I think that would be great. But we need, in the complicated and funding constrained world that we operate in, to put Eden Park right alongside all of the other venues that are put in our report. All of them have kind of stacked up against a whole bunch of requirements. So, you know, I think that puts this to me in a different category. And finally, I'm not too sure, the conversation kind of morphed a bit into the fact that if we don't put this if we don't support this amendment now, we're suddenly throwing the trustees under the bus and sending Eden Park into insolvency. I think that's unfair to our trustees, and it's unfair to Eden Park. If $10 million is going to make or break Eden Park, we're in deep strife, and I don't think that's the case at all, and I think it's unfair that that's out in the public domain, because I don't think that's true, and I think that's kind of threatening and not the truth. So I'm supportive of the recommendations as they were originally. However, as I say, I think the amendment would go through, or possibly will go through without my support. But I think, to echo to the point made by our chair, when this possibly does go through, I think it's unfair, again, that we will be portrayed, again, as the bad guys here. Where is the other partner, the government? If the loss or the lack of 9.8 million is going to send Eden Park down tumbling into the chasm of insolvency, where the hell's the government in this? If we're in strife that badly, they sit around that table. We don't. You know, they should be doing the 9.8 million bailout, if that's indeed what it is. I don't think Eden Park are in that much trouble. I think when we step up and partner with you, which it sounds like we will now, we can have these discussions in a more decent and more meaningful way. So, Mr. Chair, just to round off, it would have been great if all of those people speaking passionately about Eden Park had spoken equally passionately during the unitary plan process, when they spoke just as passionately for not allowing Eden Park to have extra events happening, and we tried very hard to get that across the line. We didn't make it. So I am interested in how we can rewrite history. Finally, I do wish everybody well with this. I hope that we can bring it back together to be a much more sensible and joined up discussion, not us versus them, not goodies and baddies, not Eden Park versus RFA, which I find quite bizarre, and nothing could be further from the truth. Thank you.
Right, last word, Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. With all due respect to Councillor Simpson, I have a lot of respect for you. I won't be supporting this amendment. I have seen a lot of people come to that table requesting money from us, and even with Eden Park today, I cannot get over the sense of self-entitlement. It's just overwhelming, but I see that quite a bit from people that come to this table. I'm trying to think of how I explain this to my community, that, you know, we're going to be giving a lot of money, taking on this loan for an organisation that has turned a deficit in 2018, a deficit in 2017. Its trust deed says that it's supposed to provide for capital works, and it doesn't, or it hasn't. And this is a lot of money that we're going to be giving over with no security. So, yeah, I wouldn't be able to explain that out there. And, you know, the other thing I look at, we're doing all this. Eden Park's focus in its trust deed is primarily on rugby and cricket, but rugby and cricket are identified as sports that are on the way down. So, you know, I just don't know really what is going on here. But, you know, I'm just going to finish by saying that I do think we need some security. I think it should be a loan, not a grant. And I don't think it's a hard thing to ask for. You know, I'm going to be really crass, but on Tinder, there's an abbreviation, NSA, and that is no strings attached. And I think for the reasons that I've given, that the public deserve and demands strings with this. So I'm going to swipe left on this amendment and will not be supporting it. Thank you.
Well done.
Last chance for anyone to speak. Member Hamari.
To Eden Park in when the Maoris played the Lions back in the 70s, and saw Sid going scored 2 tries in front of me. Just to give you a bit of context. Over the years since then, I've gotten autographs from Dennis Lilly and a number of famous people from over the world. as a male sports follower, and there's lots of us out there, and those of us that are from Tāmaki, that are born and bred in Tāmaki, see Eden Park as the home. It is to Tāmaki as the Millennium Stadium is to the Welsh, as Twickenham is to that other place that they think they're going to win the World Cup, but they're not. I am totally in support of the whole idea of a waterfront stadium, but I know I'm not going to get that, and most probably not going to get it in my lifetime because of the costs and because of all sorts of other things. So what are we left with? We're left with a stadium that who I was in Parliament when money was given to Eden Park to spruce it up for the World Cup. And I totally supported that from our government of the day. I was over the moon when council said that they would chip in, and ARC did, and according to my cool friend down the line here, so did Waitakere City Council. No one else did, but they all said they would. Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's okay. You already had it. You already had your say, and I didn't butt in on any of yours, which is really unbelievable. And so they reneged on some of the deals. Some dirty politics went on, and I've found the whole issue about Eden Park to be one full of dirty politics. I might add. I like my colleague, Member Taipari, never ever want to be in a position of putting directors of any business, whether it be a charitable business or a profit-making business, in the gun when we don't have to. And I think the only way of doing that and helping Eden Park, our home, our sporting home in Tāmaki, and I wish the Warriors were there as well, to be honest, but I just couldn't take away from the Maunga authorities and the iwi, the Warriors from Mount Smart. I still tend to call it Ericsson Stadium. So I'll be supporting Councillor Simpson's motion. Kia ora. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, at the beginning, I quite struggled because the two sides' opinion I totally accept. But last night, I just watched the YouTube and see the fairway in the Eden Park for John Lamu, and I quite emotional. And a couple of weeks ago, I've been in New Zealand 30 years. I've been Eden Park first time. And the reason is not watching cricket. I want to see our council have a different opinion in the Eden Park, but I quite emotional to see the slogan on the wall, Eden Park, New Zealand National Stadium. So I would like to support this amendment because I think all our council and the council family, we should try changing or adjust our consent to make Eden Park as well as the other old stadium and make Auckland have a more place, and particularly this area, that's the heart of the All Black. And I know that's $9.8 million is quite expensive for 3 years, but actually that's $2 per Aucklander per year. And how much money we're spending or waste the taxpayer money in the past. So I think if we can work in closely, and it might be a good idea to support Eden Park, and I support this amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart.
I'll be quick. Eden Park's a really special place.
we're not going to have another event centre or sports centre built for another 20 or 30 years or more. So let's just get on with it and support B.
Sure. Oh, good. Right. We'll do this by division. So we're all up. So you're voting on the amendment?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Clow?
No.
Councillor Bartley? Councillor Casey?
No.
Councillor Collins? Councillor Cooper? Councillor Darby? Councillor Filipina?
Against.
Councillor Fletcher?
For.
Mayor Goff?
Aye.
Member Hanare?
For.
Councillor Hills?
No.
Councillor Hulse?
No.
Councillor Lee?
Aye.
Councillor Newman?
For.
Councillor Sayers?
For.
Councillor Simpson?
For.
Councillor Stewart?
For.
Member Taipari?
For.
Councillor Sir John Walker? Sorry, was that four?
That was for. Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Wayne Walker?
Okay. That's one.
Councillor Watson?
For.
Councillor Young?
Right, that is 13, 11, I believe, just on my head count, 12, 10. Rightio, we now that goes in to be part of the substantive. We have the first amendment to the substantive has been put up by Councillor Darby. You're still putting that up?
We just need to vote on the substantive motions.
Sorry?
We just need to vote on the substantive motion.
Oh, I thought we did. Okay. Don't we do the amendment first?
No.
So, yep.
Mr. Chairman, the record shows member Honig and member
Correct.
Correct.
We
We
need
just
to change that.
we just don't have it in the system, so we can't do that at the moment. So, okay. So we're going to put the substantive, and then, but then that I think we will do the amendment. So we just. No, I've been advised we have to put the substantive as it is, and then we will look at further amendments after that. I didn't think that was the way it was, but I've been told by democracy here that that's the way it is. So we go
Point of
back.
order, sorry, Chair, just point of order because, and it's around process now.
Yeah.
That will then go through, which means you won't be able to do the two amendments that are
That,
on the table. So that's
okay,
why
that was my question as well, but I'm going to get Sandra to just explain.
Thank you, Chair. So the people who proposed amendments have spoken to the amendment. So we need to vote on the substantive motion, which will be followed up by additional clauses.
Just clarification, because with standing orders, it appears that if the First Amendment goes through, and if you speak on the substantive, whoever, they can put another amendment, and that's been tabled, which means you then go through discussion on the amendment. Can you clarify that?
Certainly, through the Chair. So Standing Order 1510 says where an amendment has been carried, the meeting will resume the debate on the original motion as amended. However, there's a subsequent information that members who have not spoken to the original motion may speak to the substantive motion and may move and second a further amendment.
So it's my understanding that Councillor Darby did not speak to the original motion. Is that correct? And I didn't speak to the original either. So we're dealing with that. So we're going to vote on the substantive here, and then there'll be additional clauses put up.
Sorry, I've had a message from Sandra. So the amendments can be done in order. Yep.
Sorry, Chair, that was the reasoning behind this, because there will be two outstanding amendments. I know that if somebody has spoken to the substantive, they won't be able to then talk to the substantive after the amendments have been discussed But I don't think with the substantive, Chair, and I stand corrected, there was only questions asked. There was no speaking order when we first discussed the substantive.
So sorry, just please, Sandra another Sandra has put in this advice, so just clarify, what does that actually mean then? We now do the amendments.
In order.
Yep, that's how I thought it was, going back to how it was. So we're going to put up the amendment, okay?
Mr. Chairman, I wish to speak to the substantive because I haven't spoken. I chose not to speak so that I would be in a position, if I chose to move an amendment.
Well, you will be
Knowing the standing orders.
You will be able to speak to the substantive, but we have to look at these two further amendments first. They'll either get adopted, and they're actually both similar, so one of them will get adopted and the other one may become redundant, and then we will all get to speak, if you want to the substantive motion. What are they? Okay, we're putting up Councillor Darby's. Okay, so read that one now. To be honest, it's not too different than what Councillor Lee foreshadowed as well. Yep, we'll just let people absorb this first. So Councillor Walker. No, you do them in the order that they come. This is that one.
That's unfair, sir. It's unfair to the other. Unfair.
Put your microphone on, Councillor Walker.
Saying that is unfair. My understanding is that amendments should be shown. Otherwise, I can't second guess what the other amendment is.
Okay, well, we're going to put up Councillor Lee's as well. Okay. I think you see it's pretty small.
Just from our point of view, my Councillor Lee's has been quite a bit better.
Okay.
Because we don't want to race into saying we want to appoint people. We just want to initiate discussions.
Okay, right. We're just going to, could you please bear with us, because I'm the second to the first one. I've heard what's just been passed on to me by the Chief Executive, and Councillor Darby may be influenced by that as well. So, Stephen, could you please comment?
Just from an officer point of view, there are B and X are similar. We would prefer Councillor Lee's way forward, which is to initiate those discussions. I think B is a bit too leading, and it assumes things that we might not want to pursue once we've had a discussion.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is, Councillor Lee, if we substitute B from the first amendment with your X, which will become B.
Yes, I'm happy to do that.
And then I will. Okay, and then to show you joined at the hip, you can replace me as the seconder. How's that? You happy with that? Right. So we're going to take me out of the seconding, and we're going to go to Councillor Lee, and we are moving X to B. No, but
So that might arise as a result of discussions, but it might not be the first step.
Yep.
It's a question. They are different things. So one, the B is likely more achievable. That's probably a question there. Is the B more achievable than, I think, would not the deed have to have go before the Parliament, because isn't it statute?
Yep.
And you'd be joining the list of government priorities for legislative change?
Yeah, yes, and through you, Chair, I don't think this has to be done, this is not an urgent, this may take 3-4 years to achieve.
Moved by Councillor Darby, seconded by Councillor Lee. We're quite happy to know what we're doing. We don't need a division on this, surely. No? Right, I'm going to put the A and the B will become a different part, so just aware on that. We'll put those two resolutions there. All those in favour? Against? Right, we will now incorporate that A and B to become effectively C and the old C, so it'll be CA and CB, and then the old C will become D. All right? Okay. Just Michelle will just do this, so we're quite clear. Just remember, we've got 2 workshops after this.
Oh.
I'm only joking. I'm only joking. The workshops have been cancelled.
Can't put that one over.
All to the bar.
Chair.
Okay. Well, you've got to think about that. Does the mover still want to? Does the original mover of the substantive motion want to actually move this still?
I don't mind, so I've relaxed about
it. Okay, we're going to leave it as it was. We've incorporated a new B. We've got a new C. Oh, and it's a D. Yep, that's fine. And E. Okay. Okay, well, we're all going to join hands here. So we're going to have Mayor Goff is going to move it and Councillor Simpson is going to second it. Okay, right. Now we're into the interesting part. We're into the, I presume there's no questions. Please don't anyone ask a question. Right, no. Councillor Fletcher is on the list here. She wants to speak to it.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I will make my comments very brief. I thought because of standing orders that I wouldn't speak to the amendment, I would speak to the substantive, but next time I'll be guided by you at the beginning of the debate. I really welcome today, as I rather cynically pointed out before, as a committee of council, we have since 2010 only discussed Eden Park twice that I'm aware of. And yet when you think of its significance as part of not just Auckland's strategies, but the stadia for the entire country, I think we have been remiss. I think we have been asleep at the wheel. And as I think most people have agreed today, the party that has let us down the most badly on this is actually the government. And so I hope, and I'm not reflecting on whether it's a government of National or a government of Labour, I think just governments collectively. Eden Park is a fantastic facility that we are all so proud of. It was terrific today to hear the Albert Eden Local Board talk about it and the importance of certainty. We really struggle in that area where there has been uncertainty about public transport routes, where there's been all manner over 20 years of uncertainties. But the one thing that we have is Eden Park, and we know how those grounds are really revered. So I'd like to say we've got to become better negotiators. The fact that we've taken so long to actually try and find the financial package that we need, whether it was a grant or whether it was a loan, I think we should have been better negotiators with central government, and we would have been in a different position. And that was the point that Councillor Newman was making in terms of what we all agreed, it seems, last year, and then appeared in part to be reneging on. I want to just close, Mr. Chairman, to say that as we move forward and our world has changed in New Zealand as we've known it, we will not see the events at Mount Smart unless we are prepared to make substantial investment in it. I know that Eden Park has the capability and has the security and has the ability for us to host large events. And so I welcome the opportunity we've finally got to actually consider Eden Park, and good on Andrew Barnes for bringing it forward. But we have the opportunity now, forgetting who owns the land and forgetting all of that, just applying common sense, we've got to look at some rationalisation of what we've got, what we can do, and what is going to deliver best bangs for bucks. And in our lifetime, I think it will be Eden Park that will be the enduring facility for all of New Zealand on major events. And it's time that we gave them the confidence and that their trustees are not frightened off because of perhaps cowardice on our part that we're not prepared to go out to our ratepayers and say, this is actually a better deal for you. I don't want to see the chair walking away or any of the trustees, and they've sat through this entire debate today, and good on them. They've got stamina, they're here, they're prepared to see it through. But I welcome where the council have finally arrived at, and I applaud all of those of you that have been willing to see this debate through. And I'd also like to, in closing, acknowledge the officers who are here today who rose to the challenge. They've only been part of this project for a very short time, but I think that the report they wrote was an excellent report. It reminded us of the precedent that we have for all manner of investments that we've given grants to over time. But I'm proud of Eden Park being part of the Albert Eden Roskill Ward. I think this is going to give us the ability for it to go into the future, and I commend this to all of you for your support.
Thank you, Chair. My conscience is clear when I end up talking to the ratepayers, and Councillor Darby, I agree, the value for money tag, at least I know I won't be listening to anybody when they start referring to the value of money. So look, my conscience is clear, and Chair, for me, the $40 million, that would have definitely put them in insolvency. So that's why I'm supporting that. I really am supporting it. You know, I wholeheartedly, because we will stop them. But look, I do congratulate Eden Park, because they do, and they are a very key infrastructure, a very key community in Auckland. So I applaud them for what they're doing, and I applaud them for the negotiations around the test in June, but also the 3 games in November. But look, for me and B, Chair, can you put that separately? I'm calling a division on B. So look, I'm just going to do that, because I think it's important that the community know that $9.8 million is a grant. But look, the rest I will be supporting. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't interrupt, Wayne.
Hey, thank you, Chair. I hadn't spoken today. I, of course, support Eden Park. It's a fantastic venue. I come from a sporting family, not so sporting myself, as most of you might know, but very, very hardcore sporting family that, you know, Eden Park's extremely important to Auckland, and I'm actually disappointed that it has seemed like a very us versus them kind of negative, whatever was going on this morning, people running around sharing things. I didn't know what was going on either. You know, and I've heard pretty, you know, nasty comments on all sides over venues, stadiums, Eden Park, kind of over it. This has been going on for 8 or 9 years. I've only been here for 2, and I'm just completely over trying to even see what we're doing in the stadium space at all, because people have all these different ulterior motives, which I actually don't understand myself. So hopefully one day we can all sit down and discuss it in a better way. You know, I've been in a corporate box where I've heard councillors say pretty disgusting things about council quite loudly to very professional people in a group, and it just maligns all of us. Took my dad to that game, and he was pretty disgusted at what he heard, and he, you know, so I don't know where we go to from here. I will still be voting against B, not because I don't believe that is worth the money. I think a long-term situation where if in some time in the future there was some sort of sale or whatever, decades later, that money should come back to the ratepayers of Auckland. It's nothing to do with any negativity towards Eden Park at all. This is a $60-something million decision today, and yeah, I think other decisions go by, and yeah, I'm a bit confused at what this whole sort of argument and debate has been about, and I didn't want to get into it, but I just want it to be clear that we all have opinions and we should respect them, and there's been pretty crappy stuff going on for a long time, and there's nothing against Eden Park or the trustees or the staff who do an amazing job working there. I just didn't feel when local board members and community are saying to me that our own local assets are not being maintained and not being renewed fast enough and not being done. I didn't feel we could do this now. I thought it was an opportunity. And it says quite clear in the reports, in the last report, around negotiations and around, so I believe the threat of what would happen to the trustees if we put this up was a bit of a disappointing discussion around this table too. So yeah, I think it's been a sad discussion really, but I'm excited about A and B and the other, A and C and D and E, the other direction for Eden Park, and also to continue to fold it in with the venue development strategy. As it was in May last year, what I read, that Eden Park is crucial to the success of Auckland and for all of us. So thank you.
Right, we have Councillor Cooper, Collins and Sayers, and then remember we still have one more item, but we'll just put that as received, but that's after this. Wait, there's more, is what I could say. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I wasn't going to speak, but I can't let comments alluding to, or actually saying that we've been remiss, I can't let that go by. Making out that we've been bad and we haven't done the right thing and we've taken too long, I actually think that is misleading. $9.8 million grant is not inconsequential. If we lose that, I can't vote for that. So I'm going to vote against B. But for me, it's around, we've given Eden Park a really good deal because we do believe in it. We do want it to survive. And we will not make them insolvent if this was a loan. That's a moot point now, but we would not make them insolvent at all. That's just an interesting argument to bolster a vote. Say why you're voting for something. To me, I want to be able to, I never want Eden Park to fall over because I think it's a great facility. But I don't think that just giving someone a grant when you've got a history, as said by the auditors and in our own report, that there's some issues around sustainability. We have to protect our investment in this facility. And so I hope that it all goes well and it keeps going for many decades to come. But at the same time, I wanted to protect our investment. But now, my understanding is that one has no security over it because it isn't a loan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Collins.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say thanks to everybody for their contributions this afternoon on this morning. I've thought very carefully about the position that I took on the amendment. I just wanted to clarify that I will vote in favour of the entire recommendation that's before us on the basis that for me the arguments have been made. And whilst I don't want to get into a whole game of who might still be left in the room, the fact is it got through. I listened carefully and I think there were some really compelling arguments that were presented, and I'm grateful to those people who made very compelling arguments, but I just wanted to clarify that I will be voting in favour of the recommendation in its entirety because that argument has been had now and the way I saw it at that time was lost. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Sayers, to perhaps wrap it up.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Likewise, I'd like to support this recommendation in full. I do thank everyone who participated in the debate today. I think it's been very healthy. I want to also acknowledge the officers for the work that you've done and the way you've answered the questions very professionally. Also, one of the things that swayed me was the presentation from the trustees. And to me, it was very clear their message about not wanting to take on further debt and put liabilities on them as directors and trustees. I just hope this resolution, if it's successful, which looks like it will put the wind in the sails of those trustees to continue to do the good work that they do, providing the facilities and entertainment and the spirit that they do to Auckland and Aucklanders and the rest of New Zealand. Thank you.
we're going to do is we're going to put A, C, D, E, and I'm, okay, not B, or do B separately, so we're doing A, C, D, E. Are we quite clear? Okay, right, I want to put put those, all those in favour? Aye. Against? No, don't think there's anyone against. Okay, there is B, we're going to put that, but I've heard a call for that to be a division. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Clow.
I'm going to abstain.
Councillor Bartley. Councillor Casey.
Oh.
Councillor Collins. Councillor Cooper. No. Councillor Darby. Councillor Filipina.
Against.
Councillor Fletcher.
For.
Mayor Goff.
Abstain.
Councillor Hills. Member Hanare.
For.
Councillor Hulse.
No, thank you.
Councillor Lee.
I think that'll be a 4, Mike.
Aye.
Councillor Newman.
4.
Councillor Sayers.
4.
Councillor Simpson.
4.
Councillor Stewart.
4.
Member Taipari.
4.
Councillor Wayne Walker.
Aye.
Councillor Watson.
Yes.
Councillor Young.
Sorry?
Yep.
My understanding is yes. Yep. Okay. Rightio, we have that, but wait, as I said, there's more, so we're going to actually just have put up night 14. I will move that. Councillor Simpson will second that.
I've got one question.
Oh, Wayne.
Well, no, I won't.
Well done. I'm going to put it. All those in favour? Against? Right.
Yes,